So I've gone for about 10 minutes here, and
180 now.
180. What's the pressure?
Pressure, and this is Air Force flying into that.
Yeah, this is Adam Berg. He's giving me this
Pressure
information.
is now down to 896.
Oh, my Jesus Christ. Okay. All right, I'm going to hold it together here.
That's meteorologist John Morales. For those of us down here in South Florida, we know him well. We love him immensely because he brings his true, authentic self every single time. He also has training and experience, a breadth of knowledge that is unmatched. And he's here to have a very serious conversation about the fact that these extreme weather events, they're coming for you. They're coming for all of us. Mother Nature is not going to pick and choose. And climate change is real. And the conversation you're about to listen to is sobering. Because if we do not acknowledge the power and the import, the substance of climate change, we're in for it in a really bad way. Take a listen. And joining me now, when I use the word privilege, I can't even begin to underscore. It's, you know what, John, it's an honor. It is an honor to be able to spend some time with the amazing John Morales. John, you and I were talking before we just hit record on this. You've been a meteorologist for 41 years. You went into broadcast news. Oh, is it longer now?
No, it's 41 years. It's just I'm just like, oh my God, I'm old.
No, not at all. You are seasoned. I like to say you are seasoned.
Yes, good.
You went into broadcast news in 1991, for which we are incredibly grateful. The millions of people that have been beneficiaries of your wisdom and your experience. In 2009, you became the chief meteorologist at NBC6, which for me as a South Floridian is very near and dear to my heart. And you and I were joking, you quote, retired, and yet I don't think retirement is a part of your vocabulary because you remain the hurricane specialist for NBC6, the local NBC affiliate, but you're also spreading your brilliance nationally and internationally. And also you've become a little bit of a viral sensation all of the time on social media. So welcome to the revolution on digital media. And John Morales, welcome to the Katie Phang News Channel. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you as well. So honored to be here.
Well, John, let's start with some very kind of gut check kind of moments, I think, that are important. Hurricane Melissa may have now come and gone from people's memories, but for those of us that live here in Florida and the Caribbean, hurricane season has not only now stretched out and become longer, but it is something that we look at with great trepidation and fear every year. Hurricane Melissa, though, was a remarkable storm, a Category 5. Just a point of personal privilege, I lost my home in 1992, courtesy of a Cat 5 called Hurricane Andrew. I was in my home when Andrew hit. I lived southern Miami-Dade County. I actually would say that a Cat 5 Hurricane Andrew is not a Cat 5 Hurricane Melissa. The storms have gotten stronger. Melissa killed 32 in Jamaica, 43 in Haiti. Those are just the latest stats, and pretty much erased off the map certain areas of Jamaica. John, what's going on? Because I'm not a meteorologist, but I think these storms are just incredibly stronger than what I knew about them when I was growing up.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a significant increase in the number of Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, or typhoons or cyclones, whatever you want to call them, depending on what part of the world you're in. And this is peer-reviewed science, right? So and this is notable as well, obviously, in the Atlantic, where just, by memory, we can all realize that we're definitely seeing a lot more of these of late. We've changed the speed limit on hurricanes. The thermodynamics, the physics have changed because of the hotter sea surface temperatures and, importantly, the ocean heat content, which is not just, how hot is it at the surface of the ocean, or in the case of Melissa, the Caribbean Sea, but how deep is that warm water? Because if Melissa, like this storm did, sits in one place for a very long time, it starts to churn up colder waters from beneath. But if the water underneath, even deeper, is also superheated, then it just continues to fuel the storm. And that's why Melissa ended up being the strongest hurricane by both pressure and wind speed to ever make landfall in the Atlantic basin.
John, it seemed kind of late to me, though, right? I mean, you and I sit here together and we're hanging out on November 5th. I used to always think, hey, as soon as I hit, early November, quote unquote, we're safe. We're kind of through it. But Melissa just hit a week and some change ago, not even. It seemed late in the season for something like this.
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing an expansion of when conditions are ripe for tropical storms and hurricanes. And while the Western Caribbean is certainly an area that has always been looked at late in the hurricane season for potential development, these ocean temperatures that we saw there were ranked in the top three all time observed. A condition, by the way, made 500 to 900 times more likely due to climate change, according to attribution studies. And those other fast attribution studies have concluded that there's been anywhere from a 10 mile per hour increase in the wind speeds on Melissa to, I've seen other attribution studies that indicate an 18% increase, which would be an amount higher than 10 miles per hour in the wind speed that we saw with Melissa. So, the science is there. Things are changing. They're happening both earlier and later in the year because of those sea surface temperatures being the way they are. And we're also, should I add, seeing storms in places where they normally wouldn't. So, for example, this very same hurricane season, we had a brief subtropical storm named Karen that was the furthest north that a storm with tropical characteristics had ever developed. So it's expanding geographically, it's expanding temporally, and the reason is, again, the changes that we're seeing in the ocean heat content, and that is greatly driven by climate change.
You're using a phrase, attribution studies. For those of us that want to understand more, I like to say knowledge is power, and that's what I try to empower people with that tune into this channel. What do you mean by attribution studies?
Yeah, so there's a set of scientists in different universities, especially in Europe, that look at, they model the conditions for Melissa in the absence of anthropogenic global warming, in other words, human-caused global warming, versus the current conditions being observed right now. And they see what Melissa would have done in the absence of global warming and with global warming. And that's how they can determine these differences. Again, you're just changing the elements that define how strong a hurricane can get. And that's why we're seeing these changes in the wind speed. I should add, it's going to be interesting to see the post-analysis by expert meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center in Miami regarding Melissa, because there was an instantaneous wind speed measured at 252 miles per hour by a dropsonde released from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. And I'll be curious to see if 185 is not the final say of how strong the hurricane was when it made landfall. I'm talking about 185 mile per hour sustained wind when it made landfall. It is possible that if it ends up on post-analysis being stronger, then it'll stand alone as the strongest ever. Right now, it's tied with the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 as the strongest to make landfall. But I suspect that it's going to end up being even stronger than that one.
For people that actually haven't gone through the experience of a hurricane, even a smaller one, I think people need to understand, John, it's not just the water. It's not the storm surge, which, especially for those of us in South Florida or those of us that live in coastal areas, the sea rise is a very real thing that is happening. But you just spoke about sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, perhaps with Hurricane Melissa. Just as a funny, personal anecdote, my late father was close friends with Herb Saffer, Dr. Saffer, who was the Saffir-Simpson scale, which has been used for gauging the speeds of hurricanes for strength. But I want people who are tuning in to understand it's not just the water, it's the wind. It's the wind with the water. I mean, it's a combination of things. It's localized tornadoes. It's this literal perfect storm of multiple meteorological events that happen that have this devastating impact on human life and property. For example, Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica caused damage to homes and key infrastructure being an important thing here, equivalent to roughly 28 to 32% of last year's gross domestic product for that country. So it's not just loss of life, it's loss of property. It's the inability to rebuild for many of these countries like Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, the Bahamas. I mean, it is a relentless thing where we are. And yet, for example, we also saw similar loss of life and damage in places like Alaska for Typhoon Halong. I mean, it's not just you have to live in some warm, area or climate to have to sustain this type of damage and personal loss.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I have a lot to say about where you just laid out there. First, let me state to anyone who's never lived through a major hurricane or is a major hurricane survivor, if you haven't been through that, you have no idea. I mean, you have no idea. You do, Katie.
Yeah.
But because hurricanes don't just take lives, and obviously the mission of the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service and us in media as their partners is to save lives. Yes. But they also ruin lives. They ruin lives. So you've mentioned folks in Cuba, the Bahamas, Jamaica especially, right? It's going to take not just weeks or months. It's not even going to take years. It could take a decade or two for Jamaica to recover. Western Jamaica specifically, the big population centers like Kingston were spared, but Western Jamaica was flattened by these hazards that you mentioned. The winds, which likely gusted well above 200 miles per hour, the coastal inundation from the storm surge, which flattened places like Black River. You've seen the videos from Black River.
And southwest Jamaica, Black River's gone, basically.
Right. The flash floods and the landslides in some of the mountainous terrain or wherever there's creeks or wherever there's rivers that cross through there. And while for Caribbean islands, the risk of tornadoes might be a little bit lower than it is for bigger locations like, say, Florida, where during Milton, there was an incredible tornado outbreak, which claimed lives, should I add. The bottom line is that, for Jamaica, this is, before Melissa and after Melissa type of event. This is the way that people will refer to this event for decades to come, probably for the rest of their lives. And just like Jamaica will have to say that, the same applies to the northwestern Bahamas for Hurricane Dorian. The same applies to Houston for Hurricane Harvey. The same applies to many of the Leeward and Virgin Islands with Hurricane Irma, and so on and so forth. And all these names I've mentioned are relatively recent names. Didn't even throw Maria in there, but imagine what it means to Puerto Ricans like me, right?
That's right.
Great disaster that was
the rebuild or the lack thereof. Yeah.
Right. And they're still trying to recover from that. In this century, we're seeing some of the effects of the changing climate resulting in more extreme weather, which you alluded to during your introduction to this question. And I have a slide that I often use during my presentations from Kerry Emanuel. He is a climate scientist at MIT that specializes in tropical cyclones. And he shows me on that slide how the return period of a hurricane like Maria to Puerto Rico in the 20th century climate is once every 200 years. You would get an event like that once every 200 years based on the climate that we all grew up with. Okay. In the present climate, that event's return period is once every 20 years. So I rhetorically ask, can a society even adapt and be resilient enough for hurricanes like Maria, Irma, Dorian, Harvey, and all these others returning every 20 years instead of every 200 years? I don't think that's possible. And I think that the blow to the GDP, societal impacts, health impacts, because let's not forget, there's also peer-reviewed science out there that indicates that morbidity and mortality spikes after major hurricanes in communities. And that lasts not just a few weeks or months, it lasts a decade and a half, in which you see the spike of increased morbidity and mortality. So it impacts your health. It impacts, maybe you suffer from this, maybe not, but there's a lot of people that are Hurricane Andrew survivors that to this day still have post-traumatic stress disorder. right? Because whenever they hear of a hurricane forming out there, they get palpitations. Because it makes them very nervous, because you never want to live through another hurricane like that again. And I'll pause here. I mean, you also open up the whole idea of all the other extremes that we're seeing beyond hurricanes, but I know I've gone on for a long time, so I'll give you a chance to.
No, in fact, it's the perfect segue, because I did want to talk to you about, when you talk about the once in a blank, fill in the blank kind of events. Recently, tragically, that language, that phrase percolated to the top of our conversation because of what happened with the flash floods, for example, in Texas. In July, we had more than 100 dead, including 27 little girls. Our wonderful community partner, David Lawrence, lost 2 of his granddaughters at that camp. 27 little girls and camp counselors when the Guadalupe River surged 26 feet in just 45 minutes. And I was so upset when I heard naysayers say, oh, it's just what happens with, Texas and you're on the river. And I'm like, no. Yale Climate Connections had a fantastic piece that they put out in August that said that this 1 in 100-year flood, as they might have defined it before, has now become more like 1 in 50 years or 1 in even 10 years, with economic damage being between 18 billion and 22 billion. I mean, John, these are the things that I think, sadly, people don't understand. The inextricably intertwined moment is these events are tied to climate change. This is not some bunk science. This is not some voodoo science. This is actual established science that is being researched, but tragically now being researched more in Europe and in other countries than it is in the United States.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, a 1 in 100-year event, these statistics, right? Which, by the way, we can frame it a different way. A 1 in 100-year event means that there's a 1% of that event happening in any given year. Right? 1 in 100, 1%. But that's based on our previous climate. That's based on our 20th century climate. In the present climate, the reason you see these 1 in 100, 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000-year events happening every couple of months, right, is because today's climate is not the climate by which these statistics were calculated. And extreme weather is multiplying and becoming more severe. In the case of flash floods, yes, a warmer atmosphere can hold more water vapor, and when it rains harder. The rate of precipitation, right, which is directly tied to the whole hydrology of, okay, how much rainfall runoff can a particular creek hold or channel during a certain amount of time, right? Start thinking about all the repercussions when you increase the rate of rainfall. What that leads to, in terms of what you mentioned, the rise in water in just 45 minutes, which was off the charts for them, right? But listen, I mean, let's think of the urban floods in New York City that happened just recently. And granted,
That was just like last week. Yeah, that was outrageous.
So, I mean, New York City is a very flood-prone place. It's fill on previous marshland, wetlands that were filled. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why New York City is flood-prone. But their entire system for dealing with rainfall runoff is designed based on conditions 100 years ago, when all those drains and sewers and whatnot were designed. Today's climate is not like it was 100 years ago. I don't care if you're skeptical about the human influence on this, which, by the way, I mean, if you're scientists are skeptical, if you're a denier, though, that's problematic, right? Because the conclusion of the scientific method has led us to this finding, the finding that it is human caused. But regardless of what you think about that, the climate today is definitely different than it was 100 years ago. And in New York City, when it rains harder. And the infrastructure cannot handle the rain rates that we're seeing today. Add to that sea level rise, which also has, of course, a human-induced component to it. And New York City now is flooding with putrid waters, okay, which are claiming lives, but probably spreading disease as well. And I only expect those events, much like the Texas 4th of July events, to continue to multiply in the future.
John, I said at the beginning of this episode that you have kind of gained some viral status all the time now when you do appear on television and on media. I want to play though a really quick clip that I pulled from social that you view recently stating kind of unapologetically why you have made it part of your mission to make sure that people understand the critical importance of where we find ourselves right now. So let's take a quick listen and then I'll have some follow up with you on the other side.
One of the reasons I've tried during all my years on TV here in South Florida, and now it's up to 34 years now, I've tried to be non-alarmist, right, all these years. I've changed in the last 5 years or so just simply because I can no longer not alarm folks about what's going on in terms of the increasing severity and frequency of these major weather disasters we're seeing, driven by the changing climate, right? So I feel compelled to make people realize that this is not going away, that this is going to continue to happen over and over again, and that we need to harden ourselves in every possible way and adapt to these increasing disasters.
I mean, John, I have an executive order from, I call him convicted felon Donald Trump. You don't have to do that. From Trump, dated April 8th, 2025. Quote, protecting American energy from state overreach. A commitment to unleashing American energy through the removal of illegitimate impediments to the identification and development of oil, gas, coal, nuclear. Then I have Trump going to the United Nations just last month. Or excuse me, at the end of September, stating that climate change is the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in his opinion. This is at the United Nations, where other countries are saying the United States not combating climate change is a, quote, betrayal of the most vulnerable, endangering the lives of innocent people in the world. I've got slashes to the tune of millions of dollars to NOAA, to weather labs and institutes, to geostationary weather satellites, to the human people, the actual people that are there to synthesize this information and data so that it can be sent out in a timely fashion to protect human lives. I get it, John. I understand what you've said. To heck with it. You may call me alarmist, but I'm not. I'm a realist when it comes to why people need to understand the imminent danger that this world is facing because of climate change.
Yeah, listen, I've done a lot of introspection about this, and I've written about it, by the way. I'll invite your viewers and listeners to go to thebulletin.org. This is the publication from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, founded right after the Manhattan Project by Einstein and Oppenheimer, because they were concerned about threats to humanity. Originally nuclear proliferation, but now it includes climate change, right?
Yep.
Climate change is included as a threat to humanity by this organization. And I am proud to be a climate change columnist for them. And twice, I think during the Hurricane Otis column, and during the Hurricane Helene column that I wrote, I've done this introspection. And that's what's happened to me. How can I, in the face of increasing dangers to communities, because let's frame it this way. It seems to me, especially in the United States, where, this whole concept of individualism is taken to the extreme. I think much more than we see in most other countries, not all other countries, but most other countries. Okay, so you want to be individualistic and only care about yourself and only care about perhaps the people that surround you? Let me tell you, these extreme weather events are coming for you. They're coming for you. And that's why I'm no longer not alarmist. I have to make people realize, indeed, like I said in that clip, which was during Hurricane Melissa's coverage, that these extreme weather events are coming for your family and for you and for your household and for your money and for your property, right? And you can't even pay insurance anymore because guess what? Climate change has already come for you, because that's what's driving up prices for insurance, which is unattainable in some locations because of the increasing in wildfires and the increasing strength in hurricanes and so on and so forth. So, it's very important that people realize that this is real. And I don't care whether you are the most individualistic person on the planet, because you lift yourself up by your bootstraps and, government should stay out of my business and don't tread on me. Well, you know what? climate change is already treading on you, and you
I
should
was going
know
to say,
about this issue.
Mother Nature doesn't care.
It does-
Mother Nature is not going to pick and choose, right? Mother Nature doesn't care.
Correct. And then regarding some of the changes at the federal
Yeah.
government level that we've seen, here we are in an era in which weather extremes are increasing, and the changing climate has everything to do with that. So that's the era we're in. It's only going to get worse unless we mitigate, right? Mitigate meaning we cut down on the injection of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which is precisely the first couple of things that you mentioned that the administration has decided to quit on, right? Because they're going to burn fossil fuels and in addition, right, cut out all the efforts and all the funding that was going towards renewable energy. Right? With the only type of alternative energy their funding is nuclear, which, by the way, I am in favor of that. I know that will not be the most popular opinion, but I think it needs to be a part of our energy mix going forward. Nuclear, but so this is the era we're living in, and yet our ability to study. So let's talk about study. NOAA's labs, right, are proposed to be shut by the fiscal year 2026 budget proposed by the White House. This includes the Hurricane Research Division, where we learn more about these killer storms like Melissa. It includes the National Severe Storms Lab, where we learn how to better warn for the types of flash floods that killed all those girls or all the campers in Texas, right? It includes the stations that monitor carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere, because, you know, if we can't monitor it, then the increase in carbon dioxide isn't really happening, right? Right. So our ability to study these weather extremes is decreasing based on these proposed cuts, and then based on the cuts that already happened. Not just the proposed ones, but the ones that already happened, our ability to monitor the weather is being impacted. We've lost weather balloons all across the US. You know, is there a connection to why the American GFS global forecast model is pathetic, frankly, right now in its ability to forecast? Not exactly sure, because you'd think that some of the other global forecast models would be impacted by the missing balloon data, but certainly the American model is, you know, in the tank right now. So study, monitor. We can't do that anymore. Forecast. I just told you the example. The weather model is degraded. It's not forecasting as well as it used to. And I anticipate that being the case all across the planet right now because of the missing American weather data that's no longer there because of all the cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. We can't study it. We can't monitor it. We can't forecast anymore. Therefore, we cannot warn people against the impending danger and save life and property, right? And then finally, the last element, which you didn't mention, but I'll add here, is our ability to recover, because FEMA has been
slashing FEMA. Yeah.
slashed and left up to the states, and the states are not going to have the resources to help people after major disasters. So those 5 elements are being impacted in such a way right now that I think it's costing us dearly. It's unnecessary loss of life, and when lives don't get taken but get ruined, the pain is prolonged for much longer than it needs to be.
John Morales, I don't really have the words to express my gratitude for you taking the time to not only spend it with me and my viewers, but to just consistently be a source of knowledge. Even if what you're telling us is not good news, at least you're there in the darkest of times to walk us through this and to be alongside us, because to your point, well taken, it's all coming for all of us, regardless of who we are, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of where you live, whether it's a wildfire, a hurricane, a tornado, a flash flood, it's all coming for us. And so I'm forever grateful and appreciative that you're willing to do this conversation with me and that you continue to be such an incredible advocate for all Americans. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
It was a great conversation. I really appreciate the platform. And yeah, I mean, we'll continue to do this as long as we can, for sure.
Anytime, you are more than welcome. But thanks again for today. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.